Good morning, everybody. My name's Ben. I've been working in sustainability for about 16 years. So today, if you haven't read your agenda, is about sustainability. Do you all know that? So we've just discussed that you're from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different majors. But what you'll find for about the first 13 years of working in sustainability, it was really hard to get anybody interested, unless you could show them it's going to save you a bit of money or something, unless it was, or it was one of those leading companies, the Patagonias, no one was interested. Whereas now it's actually gone from literally kind of the edge of business, some poor person sitting in a corner wondering how to get anyone interested in what they do, to C-suite, everybody talking about it. So no matter what you're studying, there will be some relevance of sustainability to you in this day and age. Because in a company, it really pervades every piece, all the way from financial planning, through to product design, through to employee engagement, through to investor relations. It's the whole lot. So I'll give you a little talk about, it's about an hour, but I promise to try to be interesting. It has plenty of videos in it so that you don't just have to listen to me. And just show you how it's being done well, in my opinion, why it's being done and how it's being done well, and then open up and have a chat, which I think is always the best bit, where people get to actually ask some questions. Does that sound good? Yeah. Cool. So it starts off a bit depressing, I hate to tell you. These are the things I do. I actually don't talk about what I do a great deal outside of work, and I don't talk about my kids about it either, because it is quite scary, some of the stuff being faced, and I understand every bit of research ever says your generation is feeling it, and I'm obviously not of your generation, but I feel it too. Yeah, it's pretty scary. Why is it scary? Well, this is ultimately kind of the problem if you boil it down. We have a lot of people on this planet, a lot more than it kind of could take. If you want to put it in perspective, around 1900, I think there was something like 1.2 billion people on the planet. And maybe it was 1.5, call it that. Hey, call it 2, whatever. But there's now like 7, and there's going to be 10. And the other problem is, of course, it's number of people times how much each person uses. And everybody has all the stuff now, right? And how does that play out? It plays out that by 2050, which can sound a long way away, until you're kind of my age and you like take that backwards and you go, oh, hang on a second. Like I was at uni that long ago. It's like, and life doesn't seem that long, that it's close in the bigger scheme of things. Double the resource use. Now, you already know there's pressure on resources. How on earth do you use twice as much stuff as you already do today? Half, again, of waste, and as you already know, all over the world we've got waste problem, whether it be in the oceans or landfills or just in the street, that sort of thing too. There's one kind of nice thing about that stat, though, isn't there? Where you go, hang on, if we use twice as much stuff but only create half as much waste, we must be getting better at not wasting stuff. Otherwise, it should be double the waste, right? But it's not. This one really does my head in. My daughter started crying. She's 13. She loves animals, loves them. And she started crying when she saw me putting this together. And she said, what? I'm like, this is what I mean. I don't tell people this stuff. But this came out from WWF about 6 months ago. In my lifetime, I'm not quite that old, but in my lifetime, 70% of the world's animals are gone. And if you put that into a more sort of human perspective, all those animals from the books you read as a child are pretty much not going to be here in a little bit, except perhaps in zoos, if we're lucky. And that, I think, is... that's a pretty damning thing, that we're basically destroying the rest of life on this planet, and in doing so, destroying ourselves, to be quite frank with you. Meanwhile, so who's getting the benefit of all this? Well, we are. I am. We're living a pretty good life. You guys are on tour. I live in a nice suburb, and I have the latest Apple laptop. So, hey, we're all enjoying this, but there's a lot of the world that kind of isn't, 26 people own the same money as half the world. So you've got to look at this and go, well, who's winning out of this, and is everybody winning? If everyone was winning, well, hey, that might be one thing, but when half the world's not winning, that's a bit of a problem too, right? And those people who aren't winning are really, really, really not winning. I just spent, I normally make my coffee at home, but I had it here because I got here early, and I spent $5.50 on a cup of coffee this morning, which I don't like to do, but you go like, wow, that's all they get a day? That's nuts, right? Told you it gets depressing, but I'll show you good things, don't worry. Meanwhile, this is a map of climate change since, about 18 whatever. And you see that's the average Earth's temperature. This is by NASA, so you can see it's just going around each month what was the average temperature and growing over time. So, climate change is essentially the act of taking carbon out of the ground, which has all been compressed in there in the form of coal and oil, old vegetable material and animals, basically. And then we take it and we burn it, we stick it in the sky. It's as simple as that. Carbon is not a problem per se. It's a problem when it's in the air. And it needs to go back in the ground. One of the things we like to say is let's put carbon back in its place. Yeah, that's really what all the climate change is in a nutshell, you know, which makes a lot of sense, right? If you dig something up and burn it, it's going to change the air you burn it into. But that's the trajectory that's going on there, yeah? How does this play out? Often people talk about 1.5 degrees and 4 degrees, and you go, oh, okay, so, you know, a day this warm is going to be this warm, but it doesn't work like that because, of course, the extremes get more extreme. And this was Australia about 4 years ago. It literally, you guys would have seen it in the news. It's like seasonal, right? We watch your California wildfires in half the year, and then you watch our wildfires, and they're getting worse and worse. And what happens is the firefighters actually go on secondment between Australia and California, but it's getting to the point where the fire seasons are longer and they can't do it because they have to stay home. That's what it looked like during those fires for a few weeks. It was nuts. Like literally, nothing has been retouched on that photo. It's like that's how we were living. It's a pretty tough way to live, and actually it changed a lot of conversation in Australia about how homes are designed, because nobody ever thought, oh, I want good, ceiling on my home. And suddenly everyone's like, I want good ceiling on my home for next time this happens, because everyone knows that happens again. And of course, it's not just that. It depends where you live. Fires are a big one here. Tropical cyclones, which is our equivalent of tornadoes, southern hemisphere in Queensland. And of course, you guys have got the same problem with that sort of thing. And which all leads to, it's all a version of extreme weather. And this is a town, this one's actually in America, but I thought I'd show you. This is Kentucky, I think. But we had the same problem here. Lismore, which is a beautiful hippie town near Byron Bay. You guys might have heard of Byron Bay. It's like the sort of cool hippie town of Australia. Nearby is a town called Lismore. The whole thing got flooded 18 metres, and now everybody whose house is in Lismore can't sell it because nobody's buying a house that's just been annihilated, and they don't want to spend money redoing them. So you've got this literally a whole town of people who doesn't know their future because of this. And this is just going to play out over and over and over again. And this particular occasion, the government stepped in and said, okay, we'll kind of buy back these houses and turn them into don't build. But you go, you can't do that for everyone. It's fine once, but it just becomes an impossible cost, right, for society. And another one from you guys, I think this is Florida Keys, just to show you again, you can pick anywhere in the world. You can pick Germany, had huge floods, you can pick anywhere, but expect a lot more of this sort of stuff. That one's nuts, isn't it? Look at the way it's just gone straight through one bit. You're feeling pretty lucky if you own one of these ones, aren't you? Anyway, what frustrates me is this. This is non-new news. This is so far from new news, it's ridiculous. The earliest mention of climate change in newspapers that I can find is about 1887, but I couldn't find the article, so I started at 1902, yeah? Every single one of these is basically talking about climate change. It's been known for over 100 years, and not only have we done nothing about it, we've done plenty about it, making it worse, kind of thing. Because quite frankly, the challenge is, if you want a simple version of the challenge, is every society that has ever been successful in this world, there is one core determinant that really makes a society successful. Can anyone take a guess what it is? It's probably a few, but think to do with this. Can't give me a Monday morning guess. What is one thing that turbocharges a society ahead of everybody else? Access to energy. The whole Industrial Revolution was basically the English came up with the steam engine, yeah? It changed their society for the Industrial Revolution, and they took over the entire world. The biggest empire the world has ever seen was the British Empire, yeah? If you go back to the Bronze Age, same thing. Those who figured out ways to harness energy had the weapons, had the whatever, and they turbocharged the world. So the problem is our Western society we're still driving internal combustion engines in most of our cars, which was invented in early 1900s. It's the same, we're still coal-firing most of our power in Australia, we're particularly bad at it, yeah? These are technologies that are 120 years old. They're the ones that made us, our Western societies, essentially the success that we are. On the flip side, we've all gotten out of poverty, we live well, our health expectancy goes up. So on a social side, there's a huge amount of benefit. We've improved lives enormously through the harnessing of energy. The problem is, the energy we've harnessed has created the environmental problem. And that's why it's so hard, because you're asking people to change the core of the success of a society, or an economy, if you like. Economy isn't a society. Does that make sense? And that's why the conversation about the switch for renewables is such a big one, because if you can keep the energy without the damage, then you keep the benefit, yeah? But that's why nobody wants to let it go, because we let go of essentially what powers us, yeah? If you want a good summary, you guys all know this guy, yeah? Is he big? Yeah, he's still alive. That's the best thing, hey? God knows. I can't imagine a world without this guy. He's the greatest. But that's it in a nutshell, isn't it? We live our comfortable lives in the shadow of disaster brought by our own making, brought about by the very things that allow us to live our comfortable lives. And it's true. And I don't want to give up my comfortable life. Who wants to go live on $5.50 a day? Nobody, right? And that's the concept of sustainability, really, is how do you enjoy the things that have made our society good? Because society has got better. But get rid of the things that are undermining ourselves through doing it. So that, to me, is the heart of sustainability. Is keep the good, but get rid of the damage that we're doing in the process. Yeah. So it's and that's if you think sustainability as a concept is the ability just to keep going and do the same thing over and over again, right? So that's the end of the bad news. That's the good news, is that's the end of the bad news. But it is important to look at this in context, because it's quite crucial. And that's why it's now a centre of business, because a lot of money, obviously, I've got a mate who's actually a billionaire, and they literally invest on a 30-year time frame. The decisions that their family makes are what their children will benefit from. That's how big money thinks. In Australia, a billionaire is a pretty big deal. You need like 10 billion in America, but and that means that all that bigger money is going, hang on a sec, my money is at risk if this doesn't happen. Plus there are opportunities where there is change. So that's why business is thinking about this, because they know these numbers and they're getting pushed by their investors to go, hang on a sec, where's my money going to be in 30 years' time, basically. So where is the money going? Well, the good news is a lot of it is going into renewables and changing our energy source. So this is a very, very good piece of news. It's a little disappointing it's taken this long just to match, but hey, you've got to take the good news where it is. Now, as soon as something matches, it's going to overtake. For quite a number of years now, it has been cheaper to create 1 new megawatt of renewable energy versus creating 1 new megawatt of coal. It's cheaper to take a coal-fired station that you already have and just keep running it, yeah, than to switch to renewables. But the new stuff, it's cheaper to do renewables. And that is a very, very important thing, because it means, of course, where you're going to put your money, right? The other good news is that in the Western countries in particular, biodiversity, reforestation, which means animals too, is getting better. So it's not quite all good news here, but it's not too bad. So 130 million hectares of land gained tree cover globally between 2020 and 2000 and 2022. And you can see the sorts of countries. That's just a sample: Ireland, Poland, Denmark, Netherlands, etc. Now, the overall net loss in that time was still 100 million hectares, so we're still going backwards. But if you look at those two numbers, you go 130 million gained and 100 million total loss. That means that's less than half the loss it would have been if people weren't making an effort. So again, the tides do swing in the right direction. And that's good, because you need things to start moving. Yeah? The other good news is business leaders are well onto this. This guy's a guy called Paul Polman, who ran Unilever for about 15 years and put Unilever into this space. So you can see it. It's simply that. You can't have infinite growth in a finite world. It's just maths, right? So you've got to change the finite piece and make the finite infinite. I like showing this guy because he just looks cool apart from anything else. But also he comes from a company you wouldn't think was even close to interested in this. He's the CEO of Harley Davidson. You go, when Harley Davidson's talking about this, you know it's kind of getting there, yeah? And this guy can drive you nuts, but he says some good things among the rest of it. I mean, that in a nutshell is correct if we don't solve the environment. And he's now, of course, God knows where he sits. He's kind of a bit here, there, and everywhere, but it shows that if he's saying it, well, hey. The good news is also business is benefiting from it. If you go and look, you'll find that one of the main reasons that businesses do well who engage in sustainability is they're more future focused and they spend more time looking at what their risks are and their opportunities. Therefore, they're seen as a company that is better strategically. They bother to look ahead instead of living in the now, and therefore they do well because they're judging and measuring and guessing. The other thing that's happening is if you look at a company, there's basically a holy trinity of three kinds of people that if you can keep them all happy, you'll probably do well. Number one is the money, your investors. Now, it can be an investor, it can be a bank, but whoever you're asking for money to grow, if you can get that money at a cheaper price or get more people wanting to invest in you, then, hey, you've got money to grow. And you can see up top left. So Larry Fink runs BlackRock, which is the world's biggest investment company, basically, saying they basically want to know how companies are moving to net zero. The second in the Holy Trinity is employees. If you can get the best people and they're motivated to work hard for you, well, you're going to do well. Companies ultimately, business is busyness, right? Us all being busy, so it's kind of people doing stuff. So 72% of employees now expect sustainable business practices from their company. They basically, you guys tell me, who wants to work, given two options, who would work for the company that's trying to do something about this? Everyone, right? You're not putting your hands on, but why wouldn't you, right? It may be different if the pay difference or something like that, but as a general rule, it'll be somewhere between what we call a kicker, okay, I'll choose that one over that one, and an actually core demand, depending how you feel about this stuff. But either way, you're probably not going to not want to work for a company because you do it. I guess there's always someone, but whatever. The other one in your Holy Trinity is consumers. So if you can get money to grow, your employees like working there and people want to buy your stuff, you kind of have a pretty good business, right? That's what I mean, it's the Holy Trinity. And this is an Australian stat, but it plays out across the world. 4 in 5 Australians say brands and products support causes and basically change what they're doing. If you want to, this is research, again, it's in Australia, and again, everything is different around the world, but as a general rule, and especially among the younger generations, 4 in 5 people, roughly, want to see this happen. And about half consider a brand's social and environmental actions when they choose where to work, but that changes significantly when you look at it by the generations. Unsurprisingly, boomers don't really care about workplaces because they're probably not getting another job. Whereas Gen Z goes right up 77%. But you can see actually the choice of purchase is quite high for all generations, so that's good. So how do you do it if you're a company? Well, there's no one way to do it, but we have a simple policy or a simple approach, I guess, of how we think a company can do this well. And we go, it needs to start at the company end, so corporate level. Basically, all the people who run the place need to get together and go, what are our goals? What are we going to do here? What's our long-term strategy around this? It needs to move to a brand level where you go, okay, we like to say brand is to company what personality is to person. So how does that become part of how we speak, how we act, how we look, all those sorts of things. And then product, really, ultimately, if you don't change what you make, you haven't really changed anything, right? So it has to cascade down. I like to use Nike as an example because they're a company everybody knows, and probably a lot of people in this room will be wearing, so there's something attached to it. They're certainly not perfect, and when I look through their stuff, I'm like, I wish there'd be more of it, but they're definitely one of the companies that are doing it pretty well. In a lot of ways, you could say they built their entire brand on an element of sustainability. The whole concept of Just Do It is empowerment, and it's kind of empowerment for everybody, right? I mean, they've been doing, they were one of the first companies to go into like communities, potential basketball communities in America and put in courts to bring through the next level of players. They're the ones that did Women Run the Night. They're the ones that started putting people with without legs and stuff in their ads. So they've always been about that human element of empowerment, and they have this concept that everyone is an athlete kind of thing. So if you think about it, they've always grown out of that thought, but they're moving into the environmental space quite well. So how do they do it? The first thing they do, and I think this is really important for a company, is they make it business critical. They need to be able to say something that makes everyone go, oh yeah, fair enough, now I get why you do this. And this is a pretty obvious one, yeah? If you don't have a planet, you can't play sport. So they're like, sport is our life. And you've got to think, if you buy from Nike or if you work there, you probably like sport in some way, even if it's just walking your dog. So they put it in those terms. They then break it down. She's like a world-leading snowboarder. Photographed her in the desert, nice touch, and basically said, I always thought there'd be plenty of snow in the mountains. We all have to do our part to protect the future of snowboarding. And this is a famous marathon runner saying, when I'm out running, now I'm running, it's too hot, basically. So they're making it relevant to you as a sports person or as a person who enjoys sport, which I think is really important because it says, okay, now I get why you do it. We did a similar idea for Herschel, which tends to be in Australia, the backpack you buy and go and drink your cappuccino on the way to your nice cafe meeting or whatever, or at your cafe meeting. But it's of course sold on Get Out in the Great Outdoors. Herschel is a brand. So we gave them the key thought of a world well cared for is a world worth exploring, and basically said, you don't want to explore a world full of plastic waste and deforestation. You want to explore a beautiful world. So it makes sense for Herschel when you put it like that to go, therefore we do these things to try to create that world. So I think putting that thought is really important. There's an example of them doing exactly the same thing with data. In the last 30 years, the number of snowboarding days has dropped 7%, and that'll keep dropping. So basically, who likes snowboarding? It's pretty good fun, right? There you go. Of course, data is key to all this. I'm going to show you a lot of the pretty shiny stuff, but it's got to be grounded in data, which means you've got to know what the impact you're creating is. In the simplest of terms, if you want to look at climate as one piece of data, obviously you can measure other things. You can measure how many people you're helping, a social thing, or you can measure lots of different things. But the way that carbon emissions are measured is called Scope 1, which is what you create in your own operations. So like if you have a factory, what it creates. Scope 2 is the energy you buy. I think of it as yourself, actually. I'll put it in your own terms. You as a person have 3 scopes. Number 1 is basically the emissions you create, yeah? So you can guess what they are. But it's your own, anything you own that is you that creates. The second is your purchased energy. So the electricity you buy for your home, the fuel you buy for your car, basically. The third one is all the carbon emitted in the creation of everything you buy. That's Scope 3. Now you guys can take a pretty big guess at which of those is the biggest, yeah? Scope 3, as a general rule, is 90% of a company's emissions, which is a major challenge, yeah? Because it's the one you don't control. For you and me, it's easy because you go, okay, Scope 1's not very much by like creating your own emissions. You're not really changing the planet. Your purchased energy does, but it's fairly easy to go, cool, I'm going to put some solar panels on my roof and I'm going to buy an EV at some point when they're not worth $1 million. And hey, maybe I'll just turn the lights off. And which is what every company does. They start by changing the light globes to energy efficient lighting. Then they put in things like, okay, as you walk out of the room, the lights turn off. So use more efficiently, use less, then they go, now let's purchase from renewable sources. So you can see that you as a human have a fair bit of control over that. Oh, okay, I'll ride my bike for short distances. So easy things, yeah? The problem is the Scope 3. And the only way that really you can reduce that as a person is, of course, buy second hand, because, hey, that's already had its emissions created. You're buying something pretty much no impact there. Buy better and keep longer, which ultimately means you buy less, which is, of course, Patagonia's whole push is, okay, we're expensive, but our stuff lasts and we'll fix it for you so you don't have to get into the consumerism at all. So if you don't, just don't buy it at all, which is somebody smart once said, everything you ever buy will end up as waste at some point. And it's true. Everything you're wearing, my laptop, the speaker, everything in this room at some point ends up in a garbage dump. It's a question of how long, but eventually it does, so just don't buy to start with. Now, as a person, you can see that's got a few challenges, which is it's kind of fun to buy new stuff, right? And hey, like you want to look cool like the next person. But they're kind of more mental challenges. As a company, like that's an existential challenge. How do I be in business if I don't buy stuff and then sell it? So you can see the big challenge for them is getting suppliers to change and move along. So you can see that Measuring this and understanding where it comes from and understanding which suppliers are creating it, which bit of your supply chain is creating it, is the first and is probably the biggest, most difficult thing for them to do. And that's why it's quite hard to shift. The energy bit is easier to shift. Does that make sense? The next thing you do as a company is you set targets. Now that you know what you're doing, I've measured, I need to go, well, where am I going to go? So these are examples of Nike's targets, just a couple of them. I didn't show you much. So they're going, okay, we're going to have 70% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions. To be fair, that's a Scope 1 target. You can see the problem with that target. This is where you start looking at the words. Reduction of GHG emissions in our owned or operated facilities. That's that Scope 1 bit. So they're not looking at the 3 there in that particular stat. Doesn't mean they don't have ones around that, but you don't get fooled by big targets on small things, you know. And they're 64% of the way there. So, but having said that, there's something good about a company starting by setting targets they can reach, hitting them to create more interest in the company and setting bigger ones. So that's, you can see that's more around their Scope 3, 182,000 metric tons of emissions reduced by using 40% environmentally preferred materials in their products. It's a bit of a mouthful, but again, to break that down, what they're saying is we're going to look at our supply chain and find better inputs. So instead of doing it as a percentage, they've gone, okay, we'll do it as an absolute number. And this one, 97% waste diverted for landfill. So that's pretty good for a company that's producing stuff to not be wasting stuff. Think every time you buy a set of Nikes, there's, you know, let's say the insole's going to be cut into the shape of a foot. Well, that'll come out of a square. So there's all those edge bits. So what they're saying is they've found a way not to throw away the edge bits. And you imagine that stuff adds up when that's just the insole. What about all the other bits, yeah? So that's an example of the sort of targets you see set. And you can imagine in a company what happens is these have to be approved, obviously, by the C-suite, but then they have to be cascaded down to the people who can actually make them happen. So that first one would go to your operations people who run the facilities. And it would go, guys, we need you to go renewable and do all these things and put solar panels on the roof. And then somebody's got to crunch that and go, well, how much is it? And when's the payback? When do we get the money back? Because we save money. So there's a lot of, so the finance department's involved and then hey, can the roof actually handle this? And there's quite a lot of people need to get involved in that. And this one's procurement team, where you've got to go, okay, and I know that these guys have been supplying to us for 20 years and they're like our best price and they know how to get the quality, but I need you to pressure them to actually reduce their emissions and but they can't afford to. Okay, we need to set up a whole fund to help them. And then we need to set them targets, so it's quite a big deal. And then that third one is hey, whoever runs the operations of design, well, whoever designs the product, whoever does that needs to come in and play a role too. So you can see what I mean, that everyone in this room, no matter where you end up in business, if you end up in business, you will eventually touch sustainability. And they're just 3 examples. There's also all the social targets. I haven't shown you water. I'm just showing you literally 3 out of probably 20 of their targets. So that's why it is so relevant. What you then got to do, of course, is you find ways to reach them. So I've set my target. Now I need my programs, my pathways. What am I going to do? This is an example of, that Scope 1 target. They've actually got Scope 2 in there too, the purchased energy. So they've obviously looked and gone, okay, our retail stores, we reckon we can get, so they're basically saying we've got 208,000 metric tons of CO2. We want to get to 119, or how we've got there. We've found this much in our retail stores, so basically going through and changing how they use stuff. This much in our offices, this much in our fleet vehicles. I always find that interesting. Everyone thinks, I want, EVs are obviously a pretty cool thing and everybody wants more of them, but they're really not that big a part of the equation when it comes to this stuff. They are overall with transport, particularly distribution, but for most part, they're not that big a deal. DC is a distribution center. Corporate jets, again, people often pick on the flying, and I'm not saying anything shouldn't be picked on, but often it's not where you think it is, And then, I don't know what MI is, but simple terms, you can see that the big numbers are there, and there, which is basically in the buildings, how the building's using energy. So that's the big one for them. That's all kind of the boring end of sustainability, but kind of important. Then you start going, well, how do I get my employees involved? Here's a good example of what they did. Going through their campuses and saying, well, we're going to have no more of this available. but we'll give you all this. So everyone has their own set of reusable stuff. We'll put in stations or systems so that you can bring it back and people will, an easy ways for it to get cleaned, basically, that it's not on you to have to clean it every night and take it home, and that's the thing. Leave it in your locker, put it through the wash station when you're finished with it. So creating these systems. And again, that's not going to be that big a part of Nike's impact. In fact, it's probably really small, but from a psychological viewpoint, it's massive because it means every single employee has an experience with sustainability and sees how change has to happen. So sometimes you don't do things necessarily for the big number, you do it for the big impact. Because even if they reduced all their impacts 99%, but you as an employee went in and were using plastic forks every time you bought from their cafe, you're not going to believe the rest is going on, right? It's the bit you touch is the bit that you see and the bit you experience. Moving along to product design. This is a lovely one. There's a nice video on this actually, but I didn't include it. But you can go look it up in your own time. I'm sure you all will. So this is actually one person, their design team, who decided that they would, all those bits I was talking about, the extra bits of foam, take it and work out how they could recompress the foam and create a new sneaker, basically. You guys would have seen this. Unfortunately, they're very expensive. But it's called the Space Hippie, and so half of it is from their waist. And it has, I think the footprint is 60% lower carbon footprint. So that's a pretty significant shift. I know it's not perfect. Perfect doesn't really happen very easily. But if everything in the world just changed that much, every product changed that much, that would be like half the impact pretty much straight away. So it's kind of cool. What you also see is, well, that's kind of the flagship product. A lot of Nike stuffs now, the top is Flyknit, they call it. And if you read into that, actually often it's made from recycled polyesters. They don't really push it that hard. And I believe that whenever you see that kind of crated black dot soles, which you get on some Nike sneakers, but not all of them, I don't know why, it's the recycled stuff. So there is bits of it in other sneakers. But that's just an example of one team going, okay, I'm going to help solve this, and then coming up with a pretty interesting product to push it through. And this is where I think sustainability gets interesting, is when you get into this level. I mean, by all means, some people will find like calculating the carbon impact of a distribution center exciting. Some people really do. It's not me, but it has to happen. But I find this interesting because this is the bit where the kind of the rubber literally hits the road, and where you then start to engage your consumers and change behavior there. Other things they've been up to. Some other smart cookie in Nike, I don't know if you have to be that smart to figure this one out, but why are we taking shoe boxes and putting them in shipping boxes and sending them off? That seems a bit silly, right? So somebody invented a box that is the shipping box. Mind you, I've ordered a few pairs over the last few years and not one has come in this box. So I don't know where this is, but it does exist. And hopefully we see more of this sort of stuff. I guess the big challenge there is things get dinged up in transit, and then if you want to return it, it's a bit dinged up. But that's more of a psychological question of people not wanting a dinged up box with their new thing, right? So again, we as a consumer have a role to play here in going, okay, I accept that my box might have a ding because it's not a box in a box. Because I don't really need the box anyway, right? But that's a nice idea of that. The other thing that I think's good about what they've done is when you do buy the more sustainable products, they put the story on it. And that's so important because, again, you want to feel good about your purchase. Probably not why you bought them. It's for some people, for most people it isn't. But it helps get people thinking and understanding, because it's you do have to get people to know what they're buying. I took a brief, I did a piece of work with Patagonia once about 3 years ago. I'm sure you had the same thing go on in America as we had here. Patagonia was kind of a niche brand. It was sort of daggy because the clothes are not that cool once upon a time. They've gotten better. And then it just went so fashionable here. I don't know, did you guys have that experience? Everyone's wearing a Patagonia logo. And I got this brief from their director of marketing for Asia, and he said, we've got a problem. I said, oh, you don't look like you got a problem to me. Everyone's wearing it. He goes, no. Everyone's wearing it for fashion reasons. They don't know what we stand for. I'm like, yeah, but they're buying it. He goes, yeah, but we're missing the opportunity to engage these people and ask them, say, great, you just bought this organic cotton, whatever, or recycled thing. Understand why it's better, and maybe your next purchase, whether it's from us or someone else, you could think about this too. And so which is a really advanced way of thinking for a company, because they're really mission first. They're going, we don't want to just sell it. We want to sell it and engage people and move them over time, change their behavior over time. And that's what this helps do, is it helps just make people think one more time. And you have to do this over and over and over and over again, obviously, to get people changing. But if you can, piece by piece, you can. Another place you can do that, of course, is in your stores. So you walk in and there's information on what they're up to. And I mean, it's a bit clunky. It's not perfect the way they do it, but it's pretty good. Is they basically put that line on anything that's got this less carbon, less waste, basically. So it means you can look for it if you choose to. They do other things. I mean, they do all the same kind of marketing things other companies do. In fact, much more and better. They'll go through and work with your influencers like Billie Eilish, create a vegan collection, which... hey, I don't know if actually vegan leather is that much better. Vegan leather is really just plastic. It's not actually leather, and actually you've got to weigh up, I guess, the animal rights bit versus the environmental sustainability bit, but animals are a renewable resource, just as trees are, whereas that is made of plastic. But one way or another, I guess, you've got different points of view and people prioritise things differently. What you really want is something like that made out of recycled PU. Let's see. But you can see how at least they managed to tool their marketing and their choice of influencers, not just to be an influencer because they have a lot of numbers, but an influencer who kind of believes in what they believe in and then do interesting partnerships and collaborations with them to bring new things to market. This is a really nice one. I guess Patagonia has a lot to answer for in this space. They have really pioneered a lot of things. They were the first ones. They did worn wear, which they still do. Have you guys seen that? It's basically they'll buy back old stuff. They stick a worn wear badge on it, so it's almost better than new because you get the pride point. They go around a lot of campuses and festivals, and then you can get on the truck and buy secondhand Patagonia gear. So Nike's come to the party on that sort of thing, and you can sell back your Nikes back to, hey, if you buy secondhand, right? So they're kind of making the secondhand market where they've got their 3 grades, like new, gently worn, cosmetically flawed, and literally they take them, they actually clean them up, which is, again, this is the challenge with sustainability. If you take it to a charity shop here, they're like, no, we don't touch it, we just sell it as is, whereas they've realised we do actually have to make the product a bit better, and that costs money, right? Someone sort of sit there, scrub those shoes. Sustainability can be inconvenient, but by doing it, they create themselves a whole new market, and they help to reduce their end-of-life waste of this stuff by giving you a longer time frame. Other things they do is they advocate for change. Companies in Australia are appalling at this. They're better in America. Everyone just shuts their mouth here. They don't want to talk about any topics, but there's, so Nike did quit the American Chamber of Commerce board, not the whole Chamber of Commerce, over their climate stance. They said, we're not in line with this, so we're out. And that's a pretty big statement, yeah, for a company of that size and kind of ethos to do that. They came out and they partnered with others when Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Agreement to try to limit climate change to 1.5 degrees. They came out and said, we're not for this, we're going to keep going. And as you've seen in the Disney DeSantis argument, it is challenging to go and take on politics that your company doesn't agree with, but they're very, very tight on it, and they do it no matter the cost kind of thing. This is quite poignant right now, given what's going on in America too, right? I was reading a story yesterday about how after the whole Bud Light saga, a lot of companies are backing off on their LGBTIQ plus celebrations, where every year they've gone, oh, here we are, and we do this. They're now going, oh, maybe we'll pull back. Target just pulled back in America, saying it's a danger to their staff because people are coming and getting angry and literally throwing the stands around. And you go, okay, there's probably truth in that, but I don't know, different companies handle it in different ways. I'll show you how Nike handles it in a moment. But I can absolutely guarantee you they will not back off this based on all this. They may even double down on it because that's how they roll. They know that I think companies do themselves a massive disservice where they stand for something, then they unstand for it, because all you end up doing is you've already pissed off the people you pissed off the first time. They're still upset, but they're never happy. And now you've pissed off the other people. So you just end up with like standing for nothing. And then everyone goes, oh, it's all just corporate for you, is it? It's all just trying to keep people happy as opposed to you believe in it. So I can bet you they don't back down. And all of this gets hate. You've got to understand, you go read the social media comments on any of this and it's just hate, yeah? Because happy people don't sit there going like that on the keyboard. They go off and be happy, yeah? Unhappy, angry people sit there doing this. And what we find time and time again in research we do. So that statement before, that 4 out of 5 people think companies, this is Australians, but think companies should act on these causes. They all say quite nice, fairly inane comments. Yeah, of course, it's the right thing to do, la la. The 1 in 5, why on earth would companies do that, blah, blah, absolute tirade. So what you have is this, generally the haters are a minority, but they're very vocal and they're very angry about it. And it's too easy to listen to that and think it represents a larger portion of people than it does. That's our experience with watching this stuff. So they tend to be outspoken. But so you look, there's a lot of blah, blah around this. Kind of, though you're seeing more and more of it. This was another one that everyone went nuts at, where they launched had Jib, and they used they sponsored a world champion fencer. She's not just a model, she's a world champion fencer, and they went, okay. And of course, hate, you know. And then they went out when this was a big conversation a couple of years ago with an ad around Black Lives Matter. So that's in the middle of this whole bun fight. It's all Antifa who's bringing this up, la, 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 la. So it's a politically charged moment when they bring this out, and that's what they come out with. It's pretty unashamed. Show you another one that didn't cause so much stink. This caused an enormous amount of stink. Have you guys seen this one? Of course you have. So this is the guy who started kneeling, you guys all know this, right, at the NFL, in support of Black Lives Matter, basically, and eventually lost his contract. Though there's a lot of debate over whether it's because he was standing for stuff and causing a lot of people who didn't like that to get angry, or whether he just wasn't playing very well. But one way or the other, this is the story that they put together.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah. That's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. ask if they're crazy enough.
So a lot of that's kind of classic Nike, right? Yeah. Does anyone else feel kind of useless when they watch Nike ads? I'm like, I'm never riding that wave. I'm never joining the greatest team. I'm never doing any of that, right? It's like, I just want to like go for a run sometime. But the important, but they've been running that for 40 years or 30 years and it keeps working, right? The important thing about that, of course, was their choice of Colin Kaepernick, not all the kind of you can do it stuff. And this caused a major stink because there's a lot of hate for this guy, yeah? Because he's ruining football and politicizing it, yeah? And this is what started happening. And this is what I mean about companies who get into this. You're either in or you're out. You can't be halfway there. So people started burning their Nike shoes and socks. And this is what I mean, watch what happens with this big anti-LGBTIQ thing in America. And which companies go, we're just going to quietly back off, and which ones just go, we're doubling down on this. And this is the point where if you believe in it, you believe in it, yeah? Is when it becomes a danger. So what did they do? How often would you expect a company to go, okay, we might back down and just pull that ad? Absolutely not. They went out there and ran this. So they just, you probably don't have the wonderful Aussie expression, took the piss. Isn't it so Aussie? It's so bad, isn't it? But we have, that's how you describe this in Australia. They took the piss out of it, mate. And did that. Then they ran a slightly more nuanced one, which I thought was pretty good too, which is a response, and that's just funny kind of thing. That's just heckling your hecklers. Whereas this side is a little bit smarter. I'll read it in case you can't. We respect your right to protest as much as you should respect Colin's right to protest. Now that is a great opening line, right? You want to have a right to dislike what we do, but you don't want us to. Freedom of your voice, not freedom of ours. What's going on? We think you're burning our products in protest is the most American thing we can do. Not saying don't do it, go for your life. However, we also ask you respect our troops. If you're tempted to burn a pair of shoes or some garments, please reach out to your local VFW outfit instead and consider donating them. Nearly a fifth of all homeless people are veterans of the US Armed Forces. So quite smart, yeah? You know that the people who are burning these shoes are probably pretty pro-armed forces. So you're going, what are you doing? You could be helping a cause here. And then, of course, they just can't help themselves, can they? If empathy for our veterans isn't enough to curb your desire to burn our merchandise, please contact our distribution arm for volume discounts. Buy them in bulk and burn them, guys. We're all for it. Yours in love of American Nike. And I think that's just so nice because it basically goes, burn all the shoes you want. We actually don't care because we know that this is working for us. And this is a big conversation actually around the Bud Light. Those sales have dropped about 23% off the back of that. Probably because their core audience is more on the I hate this side. Whereas I think with Nike, you probably find they sell a lot more of these shoes to your people who are probably more on the pro-Kaepernick side, or at least don't care kind of thing, somewhere in the middle. So I do accept that it depends where your brand sits. And Patagonia is easy, right? Because it's a bunch of hippie outdoor people. You're always going to win with them the more you do. So there is that question. So to summarize that down for you, I did it in the wrong order, but this is how a company does it. The corporate end is the numbers, the figures, the measurement, the stats. The brand bit is the standing for causes proudly, unashamedly, and consistently, yeah? And the product bit is bringing out new products and rethinking your products. And as you can see how that structure is a really, really nice, simple structure for any company to work by. As I say, they are far from perfect, but I think they are ahead of most, and they show how you can have a very simple formula for doing this. And that's the one that I work to in our work, yeah? So I'll show you a few others, just so it's not all about Nike. This is a nice one. This is Ben & Jerry's, obviously out of Vermont. Anyone from Vermont? No, you're from Pennsylvania. They have obviously always been a bunch of hippies out of Vermont, so it's pretty easy. They started with this stuff in their company. They haven't just got involved, but we did this one here. They did that in London, obviously. But it's quite a nice line, isn't it? It's melted, it's ruined. They just attach ice cream. Again, back to that key thought of why is this relevant to my company? This is one we did actually for them here, where we brought out a whole new They call them variants. It's such bad business language, isn't it? There's a flavour, really. A whole new flavour called, which is non-dairy, because cows create a lot of methane by burping. So you've got to do non-dairy if you're going to do climate. You can't see it because it's on the back, but it actually donates to 350.org, which is a climate charity. A little bit of sales goes there. And I got to name it. I got to name a Ben & Jerry's flavour. That is a life moment, isn't it? There's one rule. When you name a Ben & Jerry's flavour, it has to be a pun on what's in the ice cream. So you basically get the ingredient list and you go, how do I find an ingredient? So there you go, Unfudge Our Future was my amazing name. What do you reckon? Out of 10? 3, 4, 5? Anyway, it's chocolate and peanut butter with fudge brownies and chunks of peanut butter cookie dough. Then what we did with that was we also created these limited edition ones. You wouldn't know who any of those people are. None of them are in power anymore here. That's our last government. But Scott Morrison was the Prime Minister, Angus Taylor was the Minister for Energy, and Josh Frydenberg was the Treasurer, the person who looks after money. So the three probably most important people who can shift energy policy away from coal. In Australia, we really love coal because we sell heaps of it to the rest of the world. It's like our second biggest export. So it's a lot of interest in not moving away from it. So you can see how sending these off to politicians and getting people to photograph and send the photo, it's a way of just creating a simple activism approach out of this. So there's another example. This one is very Aussie, but I want to show you something Aussie, yeah? So lamb, do you guys eat lamb on a stick? Is that a regular American thing? No, it's like as Aussie as you get, right? Kids, you go to barbecue, and what do you guys call a barbecue? Oh, good. There you go. Every child is running around sucking on a lamb cutlet, which looks like that. Yeah, it's just the food. So these guys are pretty good at picking a cause each year, and this one is a few years old, but it came out when we had a lot of people coming from overseas on boats seeking asylum, and it became a real political hot potato. And what happened is the government at the time was pretty nasty government for this sort of stuff, and they started patrolling shores, taking them. It's not unlike the conversation you guys have got at the southern border here, taking them and sending them to this country called Nauru, which sounds a lot like Naboo, but is not out of Star Wars. It's this tiny little island with like 100,000 people on it, and they literally just started sending them there and giving them no pathway to pretty much anywhere. And so there's like kids in lockup. It was pretty full on, yeah? And it's still to some extent, I think, going on. But so these guys came out and went, well, hang on, aren't we all boat people in Australia? The white people in Australia is about 230 years old. And we're not that unlike America, a country of immigrants, you know? And so the question became, well, why are we treating these people badly when we're all those people, kind of originally? So this is how they went out. I thought it's kind of funny. If you like Australianism.
First here. Hey, what do you reckon? Cracking spot. Fire up the barbie. Anyone else coming?
Oh, a beautiful spot like this, it'll be packed before you know it. Oh, here we go.
Did you organise the chips and dips?
Yeah?
Great spot.
Oh, thank you.
How long have you guys been here?
Since forever, mate.
Hey, where you all from? We, sir, are from Great Britannia. We are the First Fleet.
Yeah, not quite, mate.
Bonjour. Oh, my God, it's the French.
Fromage.
It's the Germans. At least they brought their own.
Who's bringing the ice?
How many bags do we need, Dougie? Keep shipping, Shackles. It's going to be big. Oh, fiddlesticks.
My China drive.
Where'd you get those?
This week.
What's this? 16th First Fleet.
Oi, it's the Italians, the Greeks, and Serbians?
Hey, mate, do you know where the backyard is?
Got about 4,000 k's of it out here. Need a wicket?
Trust me, we need one of these around 2 a.m. Chili sauce?
You did remember to let the neighbours know, right?
Yeah. Choice barbecue, eh, bro?
Hey, where should we put the chili bit?
I couldn't keep them away. Should we crack a vegan joke?
It's not a party without
guys, what's the occasion?
Do we need one?
Look, it's the boat people.
Hang on. Aren't we all boat people?
And you're welcome.
What is love? Look, it's the float people.
Hello, sailor.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for having us, guys. Great spot for a barbie.
Best in the world.
Yeah. There's a lot of nuance in there you wouldn't have seen. Like there's sports people, there's like all sorts that you wouldn't recognise, right? Aussies. But at the end, that's quite poignant, right? It's the not the captain, probably one of the greatest cricketers from Australia ever. What's cricket? It's this sport we play. It's like our baseball, yeah. Thanking the Aboriginal, Indigenous people for having them to the barbecue and welcoming the boat people. So it's, you imagine, as I say, lamb is like this national dish. So you've got a lot of people who are not going to feel this way about these issues, and they've gone out with that. So I think that's quite an interesting one. It doesn't always have to be like highly divisive issue or potentially divisive issues. You can go for more soft issues too, and this is a really cute one out of New Zealand.
The bond between a parent and child can be really strong. And when a parent has focused on that child for so long, when that child leaves, the parent can just feel that there's such a great void and not know how to fill that void.
Sit down. Come down, look, Bob! He's dead!
The Pedigree Child Replacement Program. When they move out, move on. Adopt a dog.
If your kids have left home, we have a solution for you.
Campaigners hope that empty nesters might find a suitable child replacement, a dog that needs a home.
If your kids have left home, why don't you just get a dog to replace them?
Do you replace your kids with a dog? How's that for your Monday morning?
You're encouraging people who are feeling a bit sad about having an empty nest to get a dog.
Go on, mate. Go get it. Yes. Yeah, go on. Go on.
I understand the website matches dogs with people. How do you work it out? Is there a science to it?
Parents enter their kids' details and the software will match those characteristics with a dog that's looking to be adopted.
I went onto that website and I matched with a beautiful Border Collie cross.
You send in your kids' old stuff and they turn it into dog stuff.
And this is on the website now. They've taken a kid's jacket and they've turned it into a dog jacket.
All that crap you left in your room when you moved out, guess what? It belongs to the dog now.
The Child Replacement Program finds that magic connection point between dogs that need homes and homes that need dogs. And we think that's why it's been so effective for us.
I've got to say, I laugh. What's the response been so far?
The Pedigree Child Replacement Program. When they move out,
Why is that so good? Well, they've picked a cause that no one else is picking, which is quite nice. Everybody kind of loves that cause, except dog-hater, cat-lover people. But how smart, because if they can get more people to adopt dogs, they don't just save dogs, they create more dog owners, right? And what do dog owners buy? Dog food. So there you go. They basically create themselves new customers out of it. So we like to have a really simple equation that goes, can you do good for the world and make it do good for your business? And that's a nice, simple one to get. This is one out of Spain, but Wallapop is like eBay, basically, just a place where you just buy and sell stuff. So they've attached themselves to secondhand as a cause and rethinking themselves as a secondhand market for young people.
Hemos hecho muchas cosas mal. Hemos sacrificado bosques para tener mesas bonitas.
Hemos invadido espacios naturales con montañas de ropa que apenas ha salido al armario.
Hemos explotado de más los recursos.
Por querer el móvil que salió ayer.
Pero ya está.
Dicen que lo hecho está.
Y eso tiene algo bueno. La deforestación, hecha está.
Pero también están hechos los millones de muebles que salieron de allí.
Podemos aprovecharlos, restaurarlos, reutilizarlos.
El daño ya está hecho. Es verdad. Pero la ropa también.
Usémosla, reparémosla, revendámosla.
El sofá, la lámpara, el ordenador, la consola, el carrito del bebé o los patines.
Antes de seguir fabricando todas estas cosas, echemos un vistazo a las que ya están hechas.
Y hagámoslo todos. Lucía, Nieves, Mara, John, Raisa y Oscar.
Pero también Wallapop, las marcas de ropa, de muebles, las tecnológicas.
Hoy miramos adelante. Hoy lo nuevo es hacer menos cosas nuevas.
Hoy os proponemos hacerlo juntos.
Lo hecho.
So there's a brand very much attaching to that whole conversation I had with you guys at the start about you can buy stuff, you buy it secondhand, less impact. Pretty good effort at repositioning a company for a younger generation on that cause. Hey? How about chicken rights? Here's one for chicken rights.
Free range, open range, cage-free eggs. It's all a bit, a bit confusing. So we're going to make it a whole lot easier. Here at Honest Eggs Co, we're all about regenerative egg farming. You see, every week we move our laying sheds to fresh pastures, giving our chooks an endless supply of grass and bugs to eat, plus heaps of room to move. To monitor how free and healthy our chooks are, we invented the world's first step counter designed for a chicken. Introducing FitChicks. Made from hen-friendly materials with a camouflage design, the device fits seamlessly onto the chicken, so they can do what they do best, roam freely around our farm. Using customised software and GPS tracking, the device counts the steps of the chicken. We then print the chicken step count onto the eggs, so you can see how free and healthy they really are. Over 4,000 steps? Not bad, Henrietta. So next time you go buy some eggs, go for the honest ones.
So there's a
Better get
nice
my
example
steps
of
in.
product innovation, really, applied to something kind of like, well, chicken rights is a kind of a big conversation in Australia. Cage eggs are a pretty nasty way for a chicken to live. So, and positioning themselves really outside of other eggs, making a reason to buy, yeah? Pretty cool. This one's very interesting. I won't show you the ad for it because it's quite full on actually, but you can look it up. But this is smart. This is a German company who probably no one had ever heard of. No doubt there's sort of an online service just selling female hygiene products basically. Basically they worked out that in Germany there was a 12% standard kind of VAT, value added tax, across all products, but for tampons it's 19%. And they went, this is ridiculous. Why is this being treated as a luxury product? So what they did is they went out and said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We don't sell tampons anymore. We sell books, because books are only 12%. Oh, but guess what happens when you open your book? And so they literally just changed how much tax you were paying by doing this. And then they, of course, made a media storm of it. It actually caused the parliament to change the VAT level on tampons because they'd gone and made such a mockery of the law. So it's a really nice thing. Now you can bet that their market people, the amount of people who've heard of them and are buying from them has changed significantly. I don't have those numbers, but you can imagine how much that affects you. If you go out and do something like this, get national super media on it, and suddenly you go from just another online store to like, I love that company, they stand for things I stand for. Show you a couple more. This is probably my favourite actually. Has anyone seen this? I think it's a fairly well-known one, Always.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm gonna just give you some actions to do and just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair. Oh my God.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aww.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, I don't know what it really, if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down, because during that time they're already trying to figure themselves out, and when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person. It's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swing like a girl?
Keep doing it, because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, if you're doing it right, it doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that's not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm going to do it anyway. That's what they should do.
If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently?
I would run like myself.
Would you like a chance to redo it?
Why can't run like a girl also mean win the race?
Good stuff, huh? Who thinks that changes a brand's perception? You walk into a supermarket, you have two brands, you got that one and another one. Which one do you reckon people go for, yeah, if you're a girl? So I specifically showed you a bunch of social causes there, as well as the environmental stuff, just to show that this does run across both ends. Everyone thinks sustainability is kind of environment. It's considered broadly to be the whole lot. Is how do you, remember I showed you that stat about 26% of people, 26 people own half the wealth in the world. Well, you can find all those stats about, you know, glass ceilings for female empowerment. You can find it about all sorts of things. And so there's no shortage of causes that a company can choose to go in with and champion. It's a question of finding the ones that are most relevant to your audience as a general. Having said that, you can't just go and do the ad. You've got to obviously look at that across your organization. You've got to start back with those targets, that corporate level. If you're going to go out with like female empowerment, you better make sure that the females in your company are pretty darn empowered, yeah, before you go and do it. Otherwise, people are going to go, that's nice marketing, but I work here and like, what's going on, kind of thing. So you have to start it from that base upwards before you get to the shiny, pretty thing. The same goes with Black Lives Matter, right? I think Nike has built up over the time the right to talk about Black Lives Matter. And therefore, nobody questions their right to be there. They might question whether they're happy with it, but they won't question their right to be there. So I'm going to finish on one where they probably didn't build that platform from the corporate level and just went straight out with the marketing. And it's just a classic mistake, really. But it goes down probably as the all-time greatest own goal in this space. You remember this? themselves a week's worth of negative publicity about it. So they spent $20 million getting a week's worth of negative publicity. That is an own goal if I ever saw one. But what's wrong with it? I've given you the hints in some of the previous ones. Come on, someone name something wrong with it. As you said, where do I start? Yeah.
It's like, first and foremost, it's like an ad so much more than it is like a statement.
100%. There's not a lot of truth in it, is it? Compare that to Always, which is still an ad, but it's real. You're seeing reality here. Yep.
It seems like contradictory because like it seems like it's supporting Black Lives Matter at the beginning, and then it kind of shifts to like Blue Lives Matter, I think.
It's kind of everyone get on, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. This serious, meaningful part of our history with putting the flower, you know, that was what, Kent State, right? And they borrowed that with the Pepsi thing. I just like taking a serious part of history.
Funny you should say that.
Trivializing it.
There's that bit of history. She approached, it's actually based on a real thing that happened, yeah? This lady went up and handed it to the cops. It was a flower, you are correct. And she got arrested. So it's not as, it actually rewrites what really happened in history. What else? There's one really important thing that's wrong with this ad. Really, really important. It's the most important of it all. Come on. Where's the right? Go.
I don't know if it's this, but like you're taking someone of immense privilege and immense someone with so much white privilege and money and wealth and already like so much, and you're putting them in front of a Black Lives Matter like commercial. Yeah,
Kendall Jenner. Yeah. Who became a billionaire by crowdsourcing becoming a billionaire, right? He thought that would work, God knows. What the heck has she got to do with this? Nothing, right? So it's choosing a person who has zero attachment to this cause, has probably done nothing in her life in this space. You know, I'm not particularly anti-Kendall Jenner, but like, really? Couldn't you think, I mean, Colin Kaepernick? Good choice, right? Guy who lost his career partly over standing for this cause. Kendall Jenner? Person who's famous kind of for being famous? Doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? So that's a big one as well. You're absolutely right. Thank you. One more, come on, one more. I started saying it before. Where's the right to play? What's Pepsi ever done in this space before? You ever seen them in this space before? Never done a thing. Nike reckon they've got a right to play. They've been sponsoring athletes for that long of every race and creed, and you know what I mean? Like, they have the right to talk about this stuff. These guys have never done a thing. Now, they went out, they did recognize this. They spent $2 million giving it to a Black Lives Matter charity at the time to help do things, but you gave $2 million, you spent $20 million on your ad. Like, that doesn't, and it's like, well, what are your empowerment targets within your own organization? Do you have them? Have you looked at whether your workforce makeup represents the demographic makeup of America? That's a target we often set for companies. Go, guys, you should try to make sure your workforce represents the demographic that you live in. In Australia, we've got a very different makeup, but it's still the same base conversation. We've got a massive challenge with our Indigenous people, yeah? You guys kind of do too, but that's our version of the Black Lives Matter conversation. Now, Indigenous people are only 3 to 4% of the population, but we often just say to companies, why aren't they 3% of your workforce? You know, that's a pretty simple way to break things down. And you would think as a company that if you are more representative of your population, you'll probably do better because you are able to understand a broader population, therefore potentially sell to them if you want to put it in commercial terms. So that's their biggest mistake, I think, is trying to enter a conversation where you have no right to play because you haven't really built this up. Whereas I say Nike, very confident in that they go out with something they know they have the right to, and then, as I say, when people hate on them, they just push it straight back because they know they have the right to, and they make themselves a genuine champion of a cause for the long term. That's why I say, you watch, they will not back down on LGBTIQ+, because they don't do that. They know they've been in that game long enough that they can continue to play in it. Whereas what will happen is all your brands who once a year just do something around Gay Pride Month or whatever it is, will all back off because it's not actually embedded in their targets, in their thinking, in their culture, and in their actions. So I've shown you the fluffy ad stuff because it's kind of the cool thing to look at versus me standing here talking. But it is important that you ladder that back to those corporate level things where you earn the right to do this sort of stuff. Does that make sense? So that's the end of the slides bit. We've got about 12 minutes left. Do you guys want to ask questions and make comments? So what they've done is there's already a market for that free-range egg. The problem is what people find is free-range is a very broad term that can mean a chicken has that much room or it has a whole paddock. So what they're doing is positioning themselves as the real free-range kind of thing. But there's been a lot of work done by NGOs, charities basically, to bring photos. You know, they go in undercover into chicken sheds and show how bad it is, and they clip their beaks and they stuff them in. And so there's quite a lot of understanding of the problem. Therefore, the demand for free range is already reasonably high in Australia because of that. That's actually how causes go through. Is NGOs spend a decade building it in the mind's eye of the consumer. And then slowly your more advanced brands or your startups, they're kind of your challenger brands, like they're not a big company, come in and go, well, we'll differentiate through this, and then it slowly becomes a mainstream. And then like your big supermarkets here now, of their own brand eggs, only sell cage-free. They still sell cage-free from other suppliers, but they all have targets to phase them out. So it takes, but that's 20 years of phasing out. So these guys are pushing themselves onto the edge of that. Yeah, it's not as simple as suddenly they magically came up with the cause of chickens that can walk around. Yeah, fit chicks as they call it. Yeah.
They really put the steps on each egg.
They do. They do. That's the beauty of tech. Tech is the greatest thing in the world for sustainability. It's not hard. You've just got a bunch of sensors, a bunch of step counters, which are cheap, right? And then obviously they just track which chicken. I guess there's a laying booth for each chicken, and they lay, and they just go attach that to that. It probably goes through some little tube. It's, you know, that stuff's probably not that hard. You got to spend the money, but yeah. Yes, it would be. It would be until somebody comes looking, there's always somebody who bothers to go looking in this world, and they will find you out, and then your reputation is way lower than it would have been. So there is still lies in this world. Volkswagen being the greatest example about a decade ago. Did you see that one? This is a good example of that. Volkswagen going out, look at all our cars, much lower emissions, yeah. They're all tested by Volkswagen, They're all tested by independent verifiers. Tested them, yeah? So look at this, in Volkswagen Better, selling them into California's lower emissions rules, etc. A couple of students at one of the American universities goes, cool, we want to, they're trying to prove it right. They're going to, look, we want to show how every car company do this. So they're on the side of Volkswagen. They go, they cannot replicate the numbers. They're going, our numbers we're getting, these things are way more polluting than that, right? So they go and dig. What do they find? Is that Volkswagen's built into its computers a little program whereby the second it's put onto an emissions test, it changes how the engine runs. So they were only running at that kind of engine configuration or whatever it was while they were plugged in to computers. Now these people at the university were using their own equipment, so they just basically stuck something under the tailpipe. So that's how far they went down to lie to people, is they made it so that they couldn't hopefully be found out, and they could not change it because they're worried about changing the performance of the engine, yeah? So they could keep that and do that. That is one of the worst corporate lies in history. That cost them hundreds of billions of dollars in fines from the EU, from America, and their brand reputation. I will never touch a Volkswagen after that. Now, I'm probably a little bloody fight of one. You know what I mean? I don't know many other people who feel that way, but like that costs them a lot of money. It costs the CEO the job. So, and that's what I mean. There's eventually somebody, and that, who would have thought a couple of students who go stick something on a tailpipe and drive around the hills at California, which I think is where they did it. So someone finds you out eventually. Yeah. Yeah, it's a problem, right? And it's one of there's a few brands who actually have the opportunity to change that. We work with a couple of budget brands, and they're probably the most exciting to me because I figure if you can bring it in at that level, you democratize it. Everybody can afford it. Obviously, things like secondhand markets are good, and though funny enough, it's often people a lot of money buy from them just because they believe in it, and it's kind of the fun of finding things, you know. But I think, look, like everything, it's the same conversation with renewable energy, it's the same conversation with EVs, everything is the same conversation with cage eggs. Everything is more expensive when you don't have volume, and inevitably sustainability lives at a kind of innovation, new thing level. So what you see is that as a general rule, it always costs more to start with, and then that's why your big brands like your Patagonias and that are important that they exist, or your Tony's Chocolonely, if you go have a look at that chocolate brand. That's a really cool brand in this space, actually. But it's out of Netherlands. But they pioneer a market and they do charge more. There is a portion of the population who does pay more. Over time, they are able to drop their prices a little, and of course, your market grows. But more importantly, what you find, like fair trade on chocolate is a good example. It's like Cadbury's and all that all have some version of that now because they've been forced to by those niche brands. So what will happen is, even though your mass brands don't necessarily adopt in exactly the same way, they will often offer a product in that space, or they will take pieces of that product and slowly improve it. So it takes time, but moving it through to the mainstream takes time. Like EVs are currently, in Australia at least, like they're unaffordably expensive still. But give it 10 years, that's all you'll be able to buy, right?
But how has COVID changed that? Because, after COVID, things have just, at least in the US, have just skyrocketed,
Yeah, same here.
So I feel like that would be a step back. I just want to know how COVID, how at least in Australia, how has things from that?
Yeah, look, inevitably, when the cost of living gets squeezed, so does people's ability or desire to buy the more expensive one. So definitely that. Having said that, the people who buy those more niche boutique products still have a lot of money. Recessions don't hit everyone. There's a lot of people that don't hit at all, The thing that's nailing people, you guys are unfortunately going to struggle to be one of these people, the way the world's going, but people who have mortgages and homes are the ones probably struggling the most because interest rates have gone through the roof, You guys will be struggling just because of cost of living and rents and that sort of thing. But then the people who have got all the money, they've always got all the money, right? And often they're the ones that adopt that stuff first. But that's why I mean it's so important that this stuff gets democratized. Do you have Aldi in America? So yeah, Aldi, the big budget supermarkets. So they offer organics in Australia at the same price as everyday stuff, and they have for quite some time. So they're an example of, because they've got such a global scale, they can bring a sustainability attribute just to everyday products. So you need those players to do that and just do it at scale. And then it allows, because then once they've done that, they've created the supply chains, and then off they go. But in answer to your question, I think mentally, COVID seemed to change people into a more sustainability space because they kind of went, hang on a second, if this is what, to be quite honest, quite a small, ineffective virus in the history of viruses. Think the Black Plague killed 1/3 of the world's population, right? Back in the whenevers, 1400s or something. That's a real virus. This thing was not that gnarly as far as things go. And you go, wow, if that can disrupt the world that much, imagine climate change. Really, we're pretty fragile as a society in a lot of ways. We rely on everything kind of staying the same. So I think a lot of people saw that, though I haven't heard people talking about that for a while. It feels like they got it for a while, and now it's like we've all moved on to everything costs too much. So I don't know, I guess things like Nike Refurbished is good. I guess things like democratization, this stuff across places like Aldi is good. And over time, you need your boutique brands to bring it through because it allows, what starts as boutique eventually becomes mainstream. One day. Think about power windows on cars. When I was a kid, it was only Mercedes and BMWs had power windows on cars. Now, no one would sell a car without power windows, right? And so this stuff does make its way through. You've been waiting for ever so long. So.
It's about the environmental injustice in Australia, just because in the United States it's so rapid. People of different if you're black or brown or Hispanic, you're more likely to be affected by environmental harms, and indigenous lands are a lot more likely to be bulldozed over and taken control of. So I was wondering what that situation was like here.
I would say that's the problem the whole world over. Yeah. Because who calls the shots? People with the money. Who's got the money? The white people, right? Because England industrialized and then conquered the world, right? So that is, there's a concept called a fair transition, which is just transition, they call it, sorry, which is awkward words, but it basically means that as you move to a more sustainable world, you should also consider the impact of that world on the people and trying to make it more fair. There's a good example here where, so Australia, as I said, relies a lot on coal mining, and there are coal mining towns in Queensland that just vote hardcore against anything environmentally related. And when the people like Greenpeace and WWF went in there and did research on why, all of them say the same thing pretty much. They're like, we know coal has a limited future. The problem is, you're telling us we need to shut down so that, other jobs will be created. Yeah, right, but they won't be here, right? They'll be somewhere else. So, and they've seen how other coal towns have shut down. You're seeing this big time in America too, right? In a lot of ways, the rise of kind of your Donald Trumps and that are attached very closely to what they call the Rust Belt, right? So stuff gets moved out of one place and into another place, and those people are just left to fend for themselves. And so they're going, we're going to fight tooth and nail, and the more left government here struggled to get in for 15 years because of a few key electorates in Queensland that would just not vote for them because of this. And then it was figured out that if you want to change this stuff, you actually have to listen to these people and go, well, that's fair enough. Why should they suffer? They're already probably not that high demographic, social demographic places, right? So like white people come in rich and poor too, right? So you're just generally talking people with more privilege versus others. Why should they be the ones who's have no future left in their town and you all have to just move somewhere else? Like, that's pretty hardcore economics, right? We're shutting down your industry. Off you go, just dissipate around the country looking for a new job. Like, that's pretty nasty. Why should that happen? So that's where this concept of just transition comes in from, to go, well, if you want them to change their opinions, you better find a way to put the money in, retool them, give them some new skills, or build your heart of renewable energy there to give them a chance, yeah? And so it counts on that side. So if you want to recreate an economy, you have to make sure that a minimum number of people lose and a maximum number of people gain, and you can change that through. On the flip side, the other side of that is, if you look at it on a global scale, if you look at the countries that are most likely to be impacted by climate change, it's the world's poorest countries. A lot of it's Southeast Asia, a lot of it's your Bangladesh, your India, etc. Western countries are not immune. Places like Florida Keys, man, there's a lot of rich white retirees are going to be in trouble too, right? But it's and this is actually what's been one of the biggest barriers globally, politically, to climate action is countries like that, and Fiji and islands basically going, hang on a second, we're all going to be underwater, and you're telling us, but you guys caused all the carbon. We didn't. Like, they've had this much impact on climate change, and so why should we? Then they're saying you need to give us money to adapt our systems, because they're going, like places like India are still building coal-fired power stations really, really, really quickly, and they're going, well, we need to bring our people out of poverty. So screw you telling us we can't do this when you did it and you got all the benefits. So the whole thing is a fairly curly conversation, and that's what another thing that creates the problem is. You really do have to look at this and go, well, who got the benefit of wrecking the planet? And maybe they should put in more than the people that didn't. But then, of course, when you're the person with all the benefit, you don't want to let go of the benefit, right? It's a very, very difficult conversation, that one. And that's where equality is. I personally believe there are three core problems facing the world. Number one is climate change, because it will just wreck, like, food systems, the whole thing, right? Number two is deforestation, because when you destroy, not only do you contribute to climate change, but you destroy the base of animals and that we, everyone's heard of bees, the bee problem, right? That's just one bit of it. But you can't just destroy all the land, right, and all the lungs of the world. The third one, which no one thinks is an environmental problem, is inequality, for the very reason, because the people who don't have enough can't afford to change, and the people who do don't want to give up what they got. It's a problem. But at least when you know what the problem is, you can start solving it, right? Yeah. I worked in just advertising for 15 years before I did this, because I wanted to build up a skill set I could transfer, yeah? Well, I didn't really have that kind of forward thinking, but I knew I liked comms, but I always cared about environmental stuff. And then one day I went, screw this, I'm going to stick them together, right? But I built up 15 years of experience in the professional world before I did it. So that's another piece of advice, is don't feel you have to do this straight away, yeah? Having a skill set to bring to this party is probably more important than just joining this party. Because otherwise you're like, here I am, train me, you know what I mean? So knowing stuff. So don't feel bad if you go into a career that doesn't really have this as its core. As long as you learn a thing that is transferable, and then you look within that context of how I can do little things and join this sort of activity within the company, which is one of the questions you might want to ask when you join it. I would like to join the green team. Do you have one, and what do they do? You know what I mean? So that's that stat about people caring about this in the consumer choice. But the most important thing at all is, like I said before, Field's really disempowered, right? Boomers have got all the money. Like, they've wrecked the planet. They've had a party. They have. Boomers had it pretty good, right? They've had rock and roll. Everything was cheap. Then they bought all the houses. Now they're all rich and retiring, right? The buggers. It's kind of true, yeah? I would also suggest remember that the boomers did invent the environmental movement, so they're not all bad, right? There's a lot of them. That's where environmentalism came from. But this is the most important thing. I keep saying I'll get to it. I will. The most important thing is actually you have all the power. You think you don't because you don't have the money. Yeah? But power comes essentially in three things. There are three things. In your life, you will only ever have probably two of them. Energy, time, and money are the three things you have. When you're young, your age, you have energy and time, but you don't have money. When you're my age and you've got two kids, you have energy and money and no time. And when you're old, you have money and time and no energy, yeah? I can absolutely guarantee you the two most important parts of that power equation are energy and time. Because, as I said, energy is what drives everything in this world. Money it can stop you doing things, but ultimately, once you've got enough, it can't get in your way. Money can be found, that sort of thing. Now, there are two reasons why this is power. So number one, you have energy and you have time. Number two, you are the generation that every marketing brief that comes out has on it. Nobody is writing briefs trying to get more of me to buy their product, because I don't buy a lot of stuff because I've kind of been alive long enough to kind of have the stuff I want. You know what I mean? You guys are the ones that brands want to be relevant to. Every single brand is like, we want to be relevant to this generation. Every single brand. How do we get them coming along? Because they know that once you like that brand, you're going to move through over time, yeah? They are constantly reinventing themselves to be relevant to you. That means that even if you haven't got much money, where you spend it is really important. The number one determinant, vote that you cast for the world you want to live in is where you spend your money. It's as simple as that. As you get older, it's where you put your pension fund. But it's where you spend the money. If you guys choose the brands that act on this, they will do more of it and more companies will follow them. If you think tomorrow everyone just went, I'm only buying cage-free eggs, anyone who doesn't make them goes out of business. If everybody tomorrow I just went, we only buy organic cotton, everyone would go organic cotton. It is that easy to change the world. It is that ridiculously easy. You've just got to do it and convince your friends to do it, yeah? And the same thing applies to employment. Again, back to the things that companies look for. How you spend your money and and the pressure you choose to put on who you work for and how high you put that in there, that as a requirement of who you work for, changes the world. Because nobody wants to hire, well, luckily they sort of do because I know stuff still, but nobody's looking for people my age. Because I've got a limited time span, right? And I've got two kids I'd rather be hanging out. My daughter's rep basketball, so I want to do that, and I surf, and I just want to do that. I'm like, work's this annoying thing I do while I want to get on with my life. For you guys, you're all potential, yeah? You want to make it, you want to get things. So they want you because they want people who have still got that energy and time. So companies are more obsessed with you than anybody else. You don't realize this, you know? So if you cast your vote on where you work and what you buy, and actually cast your vote at the ballot box, you're going to vote for a lot longer than I'm going to vote too, right? So you actually have the power. You've just got to decouple it from feeling that the money is the power, because it's not. It's the time and the energy. Does that make sense? Does that help? You're more powerful than you think. You change your generation, you change the world, yeah? It's your future. You choose it, yeah? It's one of the great challenges that with politics in America is that's why there's such a stink going on, is because the people on the more conservative side realise that every election, 4 more years of people like you come through. And that's why they're trying to take the power without getting voted for. That's why they're trying to shut down the opportunity to vote. Because where does the popular vote always go? It's because they're scared of you. Any more questions? It's quite a heavy way to finish. Go on, let's have an easy question.
Like, thank you.
It's true.